The sound of small feet on marble, running, breathless. They say children see the world differently. Not better, not worse, just clearer. Without the fog of
This
ambition,
feels like a
ego,
dream.
or greed
The best
clouding their
dream.
vision.
I love you.
Sometimes that clarity can save a life. Sometimes it can save an empire. The four-season Chicago Grand Ballroom shimmered like a dream built for cameras. 500 guests filled the white chairs arranged in perfect rows. Crystal chandeliers caught the afternoon light and scattered it across walls draped in ivory silk. White roses climbed every column, every arch, every surface where beauty could be purchased. The orchestra had been flown in from New York. The photographer had shot 3 royal weddings. Everything that money could buy had been bought. At the altar stood Alexander Sterling, 33 years old, 6 feet tall, Tom Ford navy suit that cost more than most cars, dark hair perfectly styled, blue eyes that had learned to hide exhaustion behind focus. His jaw was clenched just slightly, the only tell that something beneath the surface wasn't quite right. His shoulders were square, his posture controlled, but his heart beat with a rhythm that felt wrong. Too fast, too uncertain. Beside him stood Daniel Ross, his CFO and best man, watching his oldest friend with concern that he tried to hide behind a practiced smile. The music swelled. Paco Bell's canon, played by musicians who had rehearsed for 3 weeks to achieve perfection. Cell phones lifted throughout the crowd, ready to capture the moment. Social media would explode within minutes. This was the wedding of the year, a billionaire and his bride, a fairy tale for the modern age. The doors at the back of the ballroom opened. Victoria came, 29 years old, stunning, the kind of beautiful that stopped
This
conversations
feels like a dream.
and turned heads
The best dream.
involuntarily.
I love
Her
you.
Vera Wang gown cost $85,000 and looked like it. White silk flowed behind her like water as she began her walk down the aisle. Her blonde hair was arranged in an updo that had taken 4 hours. Her makeup was flawless. Her smile was confident, radiant, the smile of a woman who believed this ending was guaranteed. She moved toward Alexander with measured steps, her eyes locked on his, her expression perfectly calibrated to convey love, joy, anticipation. 500 people held their breath. No one noticed the unease tightening in Alexander's chest. No one saw the warning he had been ignoring for months, maybe longer. No one paid attention to the small figure in the red dress waiting behind the crowd, invisible to everyone who mattered. Not yet. The officiant cleared his throat. The ceremony was about to begin, and then everything would change. But first, we need to go back, 12 hours earlier, to understand how a 6-year-old child came to be running down that aisle, to understand what she saw, to understand why sometimes the smallest voice carries the most important truth. Saturday morning, 7 o'clock, the sun was just beginning to paint Chicago's skyline in shades of gold and amber. Most of the city was still sleeping, or at least still in bed, savoring that last hour before the weekend demanded their attention. Alexander Sterling was not most people. His office occupied the entire 48th floor of the Sterling Capitol building in downtown Chicago. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a 360-degree view of the city he had conquered by age 30. Lake Michigan stretched to the east, massive
This
and
feels
endless.
like a dream.
To the west, the
The
city
best dream.
spread out in
love
geometric
you.
precision, buildings and streets forming patterns that from this height looked almost orderly, manageable, small. The office itself was a study in minimalist power. Glass desk, black leather chairs, shelves lined with business journals and economic reports. Awards from various industry organizations arranged with careful precision. Everything clean, everything controlled, everything in its place, except there wasn't a single family photograph anywhere in the room. Alexander sat at his desk, his 4th cup of coffee cooling beside his keyboard. His eyes burned from staring at screens since 5:30 that morning. Documents spread across 3 monitors showed the details of an $800 million merger that would close on Monday. Numbers, projections, risk assessments, the language of his world. His wedding was in 4 hours. He was reviewing acquisition contracts. The door opened. Daniel Ross entered without knocking, the privilege of 15 years of friendship. Daniel was 35, 2 years older than Alexander, and looked it. His suit was expensive but rumpled. His tie was loose. His eyes carried genuine warmth that Alexander had forgotten how to show. Daniel stopped just inside the door, taking in the scene. His best friend, the groom, working on his wedding day at 7 in the morning. "Good morning, groom," Daniel said, his voice carefully neutral. "You know it's your wedding day, right? Most guys aren't working at 7 a.m. on their wedding day." Alexander didn't look up from his screen. His fingers continued typing, entering notes in a margin, adjusting a figure. Most guys don't have an $800 million merger
This feels
closing
like a
Monday.
dream.
The best
Most
dream.
guys also
I love
don't marry
you.
women they have only known 18 months. Now Alexander looked up. His blue eyes were sharp, defensive. The look of a man who had heard this argument before and was tired of it. Victoria is perfect, smart, ambitious, understands the business world. Daniel crossed the room and sat in one of the leather chairs facing the desk. He leaned forward, elbows on knees, his expression serious. "That's the problem, Alex. You're describing a business partner, not a wife. What do you want me to say? That I'm in love?" Alexander's voice carried an edge now. "That I believe in fairy tales? I want you to say you know her, really know her. Not her resume, her." Alexander looked back at his screen. His jaw tightened. The truth was, he wasn't sure what Daniel wanted him to say because he wasn't sure what the truth was anymore. Victoria seemed perfect. She said all the right things. She understood his world. She never complained about his hours or his focus or his obsession with building something that would last. But did he know her? The question sat between them like a third presence in the room. "I know enough," Alexander said finally. "She's been vetted. Background check came clean." Daniel pulled a folder from inside his jacket and slid it across the glass desk. Alexander stared at it like it might explode. "I ran a deeper check," Daniel said. "Called in favors." "You did what?" "I'm your CFO and your best friend. It's my job to look at the numbers. And the numbers on Victoria Kane don't add up." Alexander picked up the folder, but didn't open it. His expression was somewhere between
This
anger
feels like
and
a dream.
curiosity.
The best dream.
Daniel continued.
I love you.
Victoria Kane didn't exist before 10 years ago. No high school records, no childhood photos, no digital footprint before 2015. Her parents supposedly died in a car crash when she was 18. I can't find death certificates. Her college transcripts are sealed. Her previous employer went bankrupt 8 years ago. No one left to verify her work history. Plenty of people have minimal digital presence. Not people born in 1995. Not people who supposedly grew up in Boston. Everyone has something, a yearbook photo, a social media history, a parking ticket, something. Victoria has nothing before 10 years ago. It's like she appeared fully formed. Alexander opened the folder. Inside were printouts, gaps in timelines, inconsistencies in addresses, questions with no answers. "You're being paranoid," Alexander said, but his voice lacked conviction. "I'm being careful." Daniel leaned back. "Alex, your dad died after a hostile takeover went wrong. You know how dangerous it is to trust the wrong people." The mention of his father landed like a punch. Alexander's face changed, the defensive armor cracking just slightly. He set the folder down and stared out the window at the lake. Robert Sterling, dead at 58 from a heart attack brought on by stress during a business crisis. Alexander had been 23, fresh out of Harvard Business School, not ready to take over an empire. But he had, because that's what Sterling men did. They took responsibility. They built. They won. Except his father hadn't won. His father had died fighting a battle he
This
was
feels
losing.
like a dream.
And Alexander
best
still
dream.
wasn't
I
entirely
love
sure
you.
what had really happened in those final weeks. "My father trusted everyone and got betrayed," Alexander said quietly. "I trust no one and I'm alone. Victoria is the first person who didn't want anything from me except me. Are you sure about that?" Alexander's phone buzzed. A text message lit up the screen. "Victoria, darling, can't wait to see you at the altar. Our life together starts today. Everything we've worked for." Alexander stared at the message. Everything we've worked for. Odd phrasing. But maybe he was reading too much into it. Maybe Daniel's paranoia was infecting him. "I'm sure," Alexander said, closing the folder and sliding it back across the desk. "Now let me finish these contracts. I'll see you at the venue at 11. Daniel stood slowly. He picked up the folder, hesitated, then spoke with the careful tone of someone about to say something that might end a friendship. "I hope you are right, Alex. I really do. Because if you're wrong about her, You won't just lose money. You'll lose something you can't get back. He left without waiting for a response. Alexander sat alone in his office, surrounded by glass and steel and the trappings of success. The photo on his desk caught his eye, the only personal item in the entire room, a picture of him at 22 with his father. Robert Sterling smiled in the photo, his arm around his son's shoulders. The picture had been taken 1 week before he died. Alexander picked up the frame and studied his father's face, looking for answers, looking for approval, looking for something he couldn't name. "Hope I'm doing the right thing, Dad," he whispered to the empty room. The city
This
spread
feels
out
like a
below
dream.
him, indifferent
The
to his
best dream.
doubts.
I
The
love
merger
you.
documents waited on his screen. The wedding waited 4 hours away. And somewhere in that same building, in a bridal suite 12 floors below, the woman he was about to marry was taking off her mask. The bridal suite occupied 2,000 square feet of luxury on the 12th floor. Flowers covered every surface. White roses, of course. Orchids imported from Thailand. Peonies that cost $40 each. The air was thick with perfume and hairspray, and the particular energy that comes from 8 women preparing for a wedding. Victoria Kane stood in front of a full-length mirror wearing a silk robe over her bridal lingerie. Her hair was already done, an elaborate updo that had taken 2 hours and would be photographed from every angle. Her makeup was half finished, foundation perfect, eyes still waiting for the final touches. Bridesmaids fluttered around her, chattering about dresses and flowers and how beautiful everything was. Victoria smiled and responded when appropriate, playing the role of excited bride with practiced ease. "Ladies," she said, her voice warm and just slightly breathless, "would you mind giving me 10 minutes alone, just to center myself before the final preparations?" The bridesmaids exchanged knowing looks, pre-wedding nerves. They understood. They filed out with promises to return shortly, pulling the door closed behind them. The moment the door clicked shut, Victoria's smile vanished. Her face transformed. The warmth drained away like water down a drain. Her eyes went cold, calculating, focused. She crossed to her designer handbag and pulled out a cell phone. Not her regular phone. A second phone,
This feels like a
burner,
dream.
registered
best
to
dream.
no one.
I love
She
you.
dialed a blocked number. It rang twice before a man's voice answered. Deep, confident, dangerous. "It's today. Are you ready?" Victoria walked to the window, looking out over Chicago. Her voice when she spoke was completely different from the sweet, slightly breathless tone she used with Alexander. This voice was sharp, controlled, lethal. "Everything's in place. Legal documents, shell companies, offshore accounts. Once I sign the marriage certificate, we move to phase 2. And you're sure about the timeline? 3 months. That's how long it takes to transfer enough assets without triggering alerts. Then we initiate the hostile takeover. By the time Sterling realizes what's happening, we'll control 51% of his company." "Good." A pause. "Any doubts?" Victoria's reflection stared back at her from the window. For just a moment, something flickered across her face. Not doubt exactly, something more complicated, but it passed quickly. 20 years, Marcus. My family waited 20 years for this. Your father would be proud, Isabella. Isabella, her real name, the name she had buried along with her father. She reached up and touched the small locket around her neck, hidden beneath the silk robe. Inside was a photo, a teenage girl with an older man. The caption read, "Papa and Isabella, 2004. The memory rose unbidden. She couldn't stop it even if she wanted to. 2004. She was 16. Their small house in Providence. Financial documents scattered across the dining table.
This feels like
Her
a
father
dream.
sitting with his
The
head in
best
his
dream.
hands,
I
a
love
gun
you.
beside him that she hadn't noticed at first. She had walked in after school, backpack over her shoulder, worried because he hadn't answered her calls. "Papa? What's wrong?" Antonio Russo had looked up at his daughter. His eyes were red, his face was gray. He looked like he had aged 20 years in a single day. "Bambina," he said, his voice breaking. "I've lost everything. Sterling Capital, they destroyed us. Took our company for nothing. I have nothing left to give you. We'll start over, Papa. Together." But he was shaking his head. "There is no starting over. I'm ruined, humiliated, I'm sorry." He had kissed her forehead, told her he loved her, sent her to her room, She had gone, confused, scared, but trusting that her father would figure something out. He always figured things out. The gunshot came 10 minutes later. She ran back to the dining room and found him slumped in his chair, blood spreading across the documents, across the newspaper article about the acquisition. The headline screamed, "Sterling Capital acquires Russo Industries. Aggressive takeover leaves owner bankrupt." There was a photo of Robert Sterling, Alexander's father, smiling in his office, talking about growth and opportunity in the future. Isabella had held her father's body and screamed until her mother came home. The blood had soaked through her school uniform. She could still remember the smell, copper and gunpowder and roses from the garden outside. And in that moment, covered in her father's blood, staring at Robert Sterling's photograph,
This feels like
she
a
had made a
dream.
promise.
The best
I
dream.
will destroy you
I love you.
and everyone you love. It had taken 20 years. 20 years of planning, of patience, of becoming someone else entirely. Victoria Kane was a carefully constructed identity, the perfect woman for Alexander Sterling. Beautiful, intelligent, ambitious, understanding of his world. She had studied him for months before engineering their meeting. She knew his habits, his weaknesses, his fears. She knew exactly how to make him fall in love with the idea of her. And it had worked. In 4 hours, she would be Victoria Sterling. In 3 months, she would control his company. And Alexander Sterling would learn what it felt like to lose everything while everyone around him celebrated his destruction. "Isabella?" Marcus's voice on the phone pulled her back to the present. "You still there?" "I'm here." "No second thoughts?" "None. Today I become Victoria Sterling. In 3 months, I become the owner of Sterling Capital. And Alexander becomes exactly what my father became. Nothing. What if he discovers the truth before then?" Victoria's cold smile returned. "He won't. He's blinded by the idea of a perfect wife. Men like him don't see women clearly. They see what they want to see." A knock on the door. Sophia Chen, the maid of honor, calling from the hallway. "Tori, can I come back in?" Victoria's transformation was instant. The cold, calculating woman vanished. The warm, excited bride returned, complete with slightly flushed cheeks and bright eyes. "Just a second," she called, her
This
voice
feels
musical.
like a dream.
She ended the
best
call
dream.
and slipped the
I
burner
love
phone
you.
back into her bag, checked her reflection, adjusted her smile, became Victoria again. "Come in." Sophia entered, holding a mimosa and wearing an expression that was trying too hard to be happy. 28 years old, Asian American, genuinely kind, she had been Victoria's friend for 5 years, or at least she thought they were friends. The truth was more complicated. "You okay?" Sophia asked. "You look intense." Victoria laughed, the perfect musical laugh she had practiced. "Just wedding jitters. Can you believe I'm marrying Alexander Sterling?" Sophia smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. She set the mimosa down on the vanity, and something caught her attention. Victoria's phone, the regular one, was face up on the surface. A text notification preview showed on the lock screen. "From MD, don't forget to sign the prenup amendment. Critical." Sophia's expression flickered. Just for a moment, confusion, suspicion. She looked at Victoria. "Who's MD?" Victoria's pause was almost imperceptible. Her recovery was smooth, practiced. "My lawyer, Marcus Davidson, handling the prenup details." "You're signing prenup amendments on your wedding day?" "Just technical stuff, boring legal language." Victoria picked up the phone and slipped it into her robe pocket. Nothing to worry about. But Sophia was worrying. She had been worrying for months, ever since she had accidentally seen some of Victoria's text messages. Messages that seemed too familiar, too intimate, from someone whose name she didn't recognize.
This
She had
feels like a
confronted
dream.
Victoria once,
The best
months
dream.
ago,
I
and
love
been
you.
reassured that it was nothing, just an old friend. But the doubt had planted itself and grown quietly in the dark. "Tori," Sophia said carefully, "you'd tell me if something was wrong, right? If you were having doubts, or if there was something I should know?" Victoria crossed the room and took Sophia's hands. Her eyes were warm, sincere, the eyes of a woman who had nothing to hide. "Sophie, you're my best friend. If something was wrong, you'd be the first person I'd tell. I promise, Balmi. Sorry." The lie was so smooth it sounded like truth. Sophia wanted to believe. She wanted her friend to be happy. She wanted this fairy tale to be real. So she nodded. She smiled. She pushed down the doubt. Okay, let's get you married then. The other bridesmaids filtered back in, the room filled with chatter and laughter and the organized chaos of final preparations. Victoria sat in her chair and let them finish her makeup, adjust her hair, zip her into the $85,000 dress. And the whole time she was thinking about the moment Alexander's world would collapse, the moment he would realize he had been played, the moment justice would finally be served. It would be beautiful. While the bride prepared on the 12th floor and the groom worked on the 48th, life continued in the parts of the building that guests would never see. The housekeeping department occupied a windowless break room on the ground floor, tucked behind the kitchens, where the smell of coffee and cleaning chemicals mixed into something that was almost comforting in its familiarity. Lockers lined one wall, a bulletin board covered another, filled with schedules and notices and a few photos of staff parties.
This
A
feels
small
like a
table
dream.
held a coffee
The
maker
best dream.
that was older
I
than
love
most
you.
of the employees. Carmen Martinez sat at that table holding her second cup of coffee and trying to wake up enough to face the day ahead. 32 years old, Latina, with tired eyes that still managed warmth. Her housekeeping supervisor uniform was pressed and clean. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical bun. She had been working at the Four Seasons for 8 years, ever since her husband left, and she found herself raising a daughter alone on whatever wages she could earn. Beside her, sitting in a chair that was slightly too big, was Lily, 6 years old, brown eyes that were too observant for comfort, hair in 2 neat pigtails tied with red ribbons. She wore a simple red dress that Carmen had made herself from fabric bought on sale. In her arms, she clutched a stuffed rabbit named Mr. Hops, the ears worn soft from years of constant companionship. Lily was small for her age. Quiet, she had selective mutism, a diagnosis that sounded more complicated than it was. At school, around strangers, in situations where she felt unsafe, her voice simply stopped working. The words were there in her head, but they couldn't make it past her throat. Her teachers were understanding, but worried. The school counselor recommended therapy they couldn't afford. But here, with her mother, Lily's voice worked fine. "Mija," Carmen said, checking her watch, "you need to stay in the break room today. Big wedding, very important. Lots of fancy people. You understand?" Lily nodded. She understood. She was good at being invisible, being quiet, taking up as little space as possible. "Can I help you clean, Mommy?" Carmen smiled and reached over to adjust
This
one of
feels
Lily's
like a
pigtails.
dream.
The best
"Not
dream.
today,
I
Corazon,
love
but
you.
soon, when you're bigger." Carmen's supervisor appeared in the doorway, a woman in her 50s with a particular expression of someone who was perpetually behind schedule. "Martinez, bridal suite needs turn-down service at 10 a.m. You're assigned." "Yes, I'll be there." The supervisor left. Carmen sighed and looked at Lily. "Stay here, okay? Watch your tablet. I'll be back in 20 minutes. She had saved for 6 months to buy Lily that tablet during a Black Friday sale. It was refurbished, a generation behind, but it had educational games and drawing apps that kept Lily occupied during the long hours when Carmen had to work and couldn't afford childcare. Lily nodded. She was good at staying where she was told. Carmen kissed her daughter's forehead and left, pushing her cleaning cart toward the service elevator. Lily sat alone in the break room for exactly 8 minutes. She tried to be good. She really did. She opened the drawing app on her tablet and started sketching a picture of Mr. Hops wearing a crown. But the break room was stuffy and boring, and she was 6 years old. The door to the break room didn't lock from the inside. It wasn't supposed to. Fire code. Lily looked at the door, looked at her tablet, looked at Mr. Hops. "Maybe just a little walk," she whispered to the rabbit. "Just to see." She slipped off the chair, clutching Mr. Hops and her tablet, and ventured into the hallway. The service corridors of the Four Seasons were clean but utilitarian. White walls, fluorescent lights, the carpeting that guests walked on gave way to practical linoleum. Lily had been in these hallways before, holding her
This
mother's
feels
hand,
like a dream.
watching the
best
adults
dream.
rush past with
I love
carts
you.
and supplies, and the focused expressions of people with jobs to do. Now she walked alone, small and quiet, invisible to the staff members who hurried past. She followed the path she had seen her mother take toward the elevators. She wasn't trying to cause trouble. She was just curious, just bored, just 6. The service elevator opened. Two housekeepers exited, talking about their schedules. Lily slipped inside before the doors closed. The buttons on the wall were labeled with floor numbers. Lily couldn't reach most of them, but she could reach the one marked 12. Her mother had said the bridal suite was on 12. Maybe if she found it, she could watch the pretty bride get ready, just for a minute. Then she would go back to the break room before anyone noticed. The elevator rose. The doors opened on the 12th floor. More corridors, more staff rushing past. Lily followed the sound of voices and music. Down one hallway, then another. The carpet here was thicker. The walls were painted in soft creams instead of institutional white. This was closer to where the guests stayed. She turned a corner and saw a door standing slightly open. Music drifted out. Laughter. Women's voices talking over each other. The bridal suite. Lily approached slowly, clutching Mr. Hops tighter. She knew she wasn't supposed to be here, but the door was open, and she just wanted to see, just for a second. She reached the door and peered through the 3-inch gap. His voice was deep, confident. After today, half the company is ours. Victoria laughed softly. And Sterling will be ruined, just like my father was.
This feels
Your
like a
father
dream.
would be proud,
The best dream.
I love
This is
you.
for Papa, and for everyone the Sterlings destroyed. They kissed again. Lily stood frozen. She didn't understand all the words. She was 6, but she understood enough. She understood that the pretty bride lady was kissing someone who wasn't the groom. She understood that they were planning something bad. She understood that Mr. Alex, the nice man who had picked up Mr. Hops that morning and asked her name, was about to be hurt. Mr. Hops slipped from her grasp. The soft thud of the stuffed rabbit hitting the floor seemed impossibly loud. Inside the suite, Victoria and Marcus froze. "Did you hear something?" Victoria's voice, sharp now. Lily didn't wait to hear more. She grabbed Mr. Hops and ran. Her small feet carried her back down the hallway, around the corner, into the service corridor. Her heart was pounding so hard it hurt. Her breath came in gasps that were almost sobs. She found a linen closet and ducked inside, pulling the door almost closed, leaving just enough gap to see out. She sat on the floor among the clean towels and sheets, hugging Mr. Hops and trying not to cry. Behind her in the bridal suite, Victoria walked to the door and looked out into the empty hallway. Nothing. No one. "Paranoid," Marcus said from inside the room. Victoria closed the door fully this time, making sure it latched. In the linen closet, Lily whispered to Mr. Hops, "The pretty lady is bad. She's going to hurt Mr. Alex. What do I do?" Her tablet was still in her lap. She looked at the pictures she had taken, clear images. The woman in white, the gray-haired man,
This feels like
their
a dream.
faces,
The best
their
dream.
closeness.
I love you.
Her mother had always told her, if you see something bad, you need proof. Pictures don't lie. Lily tucked the tablet into the small backpack she always carried. Evidence. She didn't know that word yet, but she understood the concept. She waited in the closet for 5 minutes that felt like hours. Then she ventured back out, moving quickly toward the service elevator. She needed to find her mother. She needed to tell someone. Carmen found her first, coming around the corner with her cleaning cart, her face shifting from worry to relief to anger in quick succession. "Mija, why did you leave the break room?" "Mommy," Lily's voice was shaking. "The pretty bride lady, she's bad. I saw her." "Lily, not now. I have so much work. Please, no stories today." "But Mommy, she was kissing a gray-hair man, not Mr. Alex, and they said things, mean things, about taking everything." Carmen stopped. She knelt down to Lily's level, searching her daughter's face. Lily didn't lie. The selective mutism made her hyper-honest when she did speak, as if every word cost too much to waste on falsehood. "Lily, are you absolutely sure about what you saw?" Lily nodded hard. "I'm sure. I have pictures." She pulled out the tablet and showed her mother. Carmen's face went pale as she scrolled through the images. 3 pictures. Clear. Damning. Time-stamped. "Dios mío," Carmen whispered. "Lily, where did you see this?" "Bridal suite, through the door." Carmen's hands were shaking now. She knew what this meant. The Sterling family was powerful, wealthy, connected.
This
If she
feels
came
like a
forward with
dream.
this,
The
if
best
Lily
dream.
said something,
I love you.
they could lose everything. Their jobs, their apartment, their stability. Everything they had fought so hard to build. But if they said nothing, a good man was about to marry a woman who was lying to him, a woman planning to hurt him. Carmen was terrified of consequences, but she was also a mother, and mothers protect people, even people they barely know. Okay, mija, okay, we need to think about this. But they didn't have time to think, because the wedding was in 90 minutes. And somewhere into the building, Alexander Sterling was getting dressed, completely unaware that in a linen closet on the 12th floor, a 6-year-old child held evidence that would shatter his perfect day into 1,000 pieces. The clock was ticking, the guests were arriving, the orchestra was warming up, the photographer was checking his equipment, white roses were being arranged for the 10th time, and Lily held her tablet and her rabbit and waited for someone to tell her what to do next. 11 o'clock arrived with the weight of inevitability. The grand ballroom of the Four Seasons had been transformed into something that existed between reality and fantasy. 500 white chairs arranged in perfect rows, each with a white silk bow. The center aisle was lined with rose petals, precise and deliberate. Crystal chandeliers overhead had been adjusted 3 times to achieve exactly the right amount of light. Soft, romantic, expensive. The guests filed in wearing their finest. Designer suits, haute couture dresses, jewelry that required insurance policies. These were Chicago's elite, CEOs, politicians, old money and new. They
This
chatted
feels
in
like
the
a
careful
dream.
way that people of
dream.
means chat,
I love you.
politely, but with underlying currents of competition and assessment. Who looked better? Who arrived with whom? Who would be photographed for which society pages? 3 television stations had cameras positioned discreetly at the back. This was news, a billionaire's wedding, public interest. The footage would run on evening broadcasts with commentary about love and success and the American dream. Sophia Chen arrived early, taking her position near the front as maid of honor. She wore a pale blue dress that Victoria had chosen. Her smile was practiced, but her eyes kept darting toward the entrance, carrying the weight of doubt she couldn't quite shake. Daniel Ross stood at the altar in his position as best man. He caught Sophia's eye from across the room. They had never met before this wedding, but in that moment, they recognized something in each other. Concern, uncertainty, the look of people who wanted to speak up but didn't know how. And then Alexander Sterling entered from a side door. He moved with the careful control of a man who had learned to command rooms by age 25. Navy suit perfectly tailored, shoes polished to a mirror shine, hair styled with the kind of precision that looked effortless but required considerable effort. His face was calm, composed, the mask he wore for public appearances. But Daniel, who had known him for 15 years, could see the truth beneath. The slight tension in his shoulders, the way his jaw was clenched just a fraction too tight, the way his eyes swept the room as if looking for escape routes. Alexander took his position at the altar. Daniel stepped closer and whispered so only his friend could hear.
This feels like a dream.
Last chance to
The
run.
best dream.
I love
Alexander's
you.
response came without hesitation. I don't run. Your dad used to say that right before he made his biggest mistakes. Alexander's expression flickered. Anger, pain, warning. Don't. Daniel backed off. He had tried. That's all a best man could do. The orchestra began playing Pachelbel's canon. The moment had arrived. Guests rose from their seats. Cell phones lifted. Whispered conversations stopped. Everyone turned toward the back of the room, waiting for the doors to open, waiting for the bride to appear. In the holding room behind those doors, Victoria stood alone for just a moment. Her dress was perfect. Her hair was perfect. Her makeup was flawless. She looked like every bride in every magazine. The dream made flesh. She took one deep breath, checked her reflection one final time, let the cold calculation in her eyes soften into something that could pass for love. Then she nodded to the wedding coordinator. The doors opened. Gasps rippled through the crowd. She was stunning, objectively, undeniably beautiful. The kind of beautiful that made people understand why wars had been fought over women throughout history. She began her walk down the rose-petal aisle, each step measured, each movement graceful. Her eyes locked on Alexander's, her smile radiant. She looked like a woman walking toward her future with joy and certainty. Alexander watched her approach and felt something twist in his chest. Was it love? Was it doubt? Was it the last warning of instinct before disaster struck? He approached the altar, she took her place beside him.
This feels like a
Their
dream.
hands met.
The best
The
dream.
officiant,
I
a
love
judge
you.
who had married half of Chicago's power couples, cleared his throat and began. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to witness the union of Alexander Sterling and Victoria Kane in holy matrimony. His voice carried through the ballroom, formal, traditional, the words that had been spoken at countless weddings for centuries. Marriage is a sacred bond, not to be entered into lightly, but reverently, deliberately, and with the clear understanding that the words blurred together. Alexander heard them without processing them. His focus had narrowed to a single point. Victoria's hand in his, her ring finger, bare for just a few more minutes. Behind the crowd in the service corridor that ran parallel to the ballroom, Carmen Martinez stood with her daughter. Lily was clutching Mr. Hops so tightly the rabbit's fabric was bunched in her small fists. "Mommy," Lily whispered, "we have to tell him." "I know, mija, but if we do this, everything changes. We could lose our home." "But he's nice, and she's mean. That's not fair." Carmen looked down at her daughter, 6 years old, still believing that fairness mattered, still believing that telling the truth was always right, even when it was hard. How do you explain to a child that the world doesn't work that way? That sometimes honesty costs more than people can afford? But as Carmen looked at Lily's face, at the determination mixed with fear, she realized something. If she told her daughter to stay silent now, what lesson would that teach? That truth only matters when it's convenient? That protecting yourself is more important than protecting others? What
This
kind
feels
of
like a
person
dream.
would Lily become
The
if
best
Carmen
dream.
taught her that?
I love you.
"Okay," Carmen whispered. "Okay, but I'm coming with you. And if anything goes wrong, we run. Understand?" Lily nodded. They moved toward the ballroom entrance. Security stopped them. A man in a black suit with an earpiece and the particular expression of someone who took his job very seriously. "Ma'am, the ceremony has started. No one goes in." "Please," Carmen said, her voice shaking. "I need to speak to Mr. Sterling. It's important." "Ma'am, your housekeeping staff. Mr. Sterling is getting married. Whatever it is can wait." "But my daughter saw something. The bride. There's something he needs to know before he—" The security guard's expression hardened. "Do you want to keep your job?" Carmen stopped. The threat was clear. Explicit. Devastating. Lily tugged her mother's hand. She looked up at the security guard. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Please, sir, Mr. Alex needs to know the truth." The guard looked down at this small child in a homemade red dress, clutching a worn stuffed rabbit. For just a moment, his expression softened. But only a moment. "Go back to the staff areas. Now." Inside the ballroom, the ceremony continued. If anyone can show just cause why these two should not be joined in matrimony, speak now or forever hold your peace. The traditional pause, 5 seconds of silence. 10, 15, Victoria's hand tightened on Alexander's. Victorious. In the hallway, Lily made a decision. She pulled her hand from her mother's grip, and she ran. "Lily, no," Carmen called, but it was too late. Lily pushed past the
This
security
feels
guard.
like a dream.
She was small.
The best dream.
Fast.
I love you.
She ducked under his reaching hands and burst through the ballroom doors. 500 heads turned. The orchestra faltered and stopped. Cell phones shifted, capturing this unexpected moment. Alexander Sterling and Victoria Kane froze at the altar, mid-vow, and Lily Martinez ran down the rose-petal aisle in her red dress, with Mr. Hops clutched in her arms and her tablet bouncing in her backpack, straight toward the man who had been kind to her that morning, the man who didn't know he was about to marry a lie, the man whose life was about to change because a 6-year-old child believed that truth mattered more than fear. The sound of small feet on marble. Running. Desperate. Lily Martinez burst into the sacred space where 500 people sat frozen in shock. Her red dress stood out against all the white like a drop of blood on snow. Mr. Hops dangled from one hand. Her pigtails had come loose during her sprint. Her breathing was ragged, panicked, but she didn't stop. She ran straight down the center aisle between rows of Chicago's elite, past women in designer gowns who gasped and clutched their pearls, past men in $1,000 suits who turned to follow her progress with expressions ranging from confusion to outrage, past the cameras that swiveled to capture this moment that would be replayed on every news channel by evening. She ran toward Alexander Sterling, and she didn't slow down until she reached him and grabbed his hand. Her small fingers wrapped around his. Her face tilted up to look at him. Her eyes were wide, terrified, but absolutely certain. "Mr. Alex," she gasped,
This
fighting
feels
for breath.
like a dream.
"Don't marry
best
her."
dream.
Silence
I love
crashed
you.
over the ballroom like a physical force, the kind of silence that makes ears ring. 500 people collectively held their breath. The judge froze mid-sentence. Even the chandeliers seemed to stop their gentle swaying. Alexander stared down at this child. Recognition flickered across his face. The little girl from that morning, the one who had dropped her stuffed rabbit, the one whose name he had asked. "Lily?" His voice was gentle despite the chaos. He knelt down slowly so their eyes were level. "What's wrong?" Victoria's reaction was instantaneous. Perfect. Her face shifted through shock to concern to gentle amusement in the space of 3 heartbeats. She reached out as if to comfort the confused child. "Oh my God, whose child is this? Someone please. She's clearly lost." But Lily didn't look at Victoria. Her focus stayed locked on Alexander. Her voice grew louder, stronger, carrying across the silent room. "I saw her. I saw her kissing someone else. A man with gray hair. In the white room upstairs." The silence shattered. Gasps erupted throughout the crowd. Whispered exclamations. The particular sound of scandal catching fire. Victoria laughed. Too sharp. Too quick. "This is ridiculous. She's a child. She doesn't know what she's talking about." But Alexander saw something in Lily's face that stopped him cold. Absolute certainty. The kind of certainty that doesn't understand how to lie yet. He looked at this 6-year-old child in a homemade dress, trembling but determined, and something in his chest recognized
This feels
truth.
like a dream.
"Lily,"
best
he
dream.
said softly,
I
still
love you.
kneeling, still holding her small hand. "What exactly did you see?" Carmen burst through the doors behind her daughter, horrified and apologizing. "Mr. Sterling, I'm so sorry. My daughter, she's confused. She must have seen something on television or imagined." Alexander raised his free hand. "Stop." His eyes never left Lily's face. "When did you see this?" Lily's voice steadied as she found her courage. "This morning, 10 o'clock. The pretty lady in white underwear, kissing the gray hair man. They were saying things. Mean things. They said they were going to take everything from you. After today." The words landed like grenades, each one exploding in the consciousness of everyone listening. Alexander's world tilted, shifted, reformed itself around this new reality. Daniel stepped forward from his position as best man. "Alex." But Alexander was already standing, already turning to face Victoria. His expression had gone completely still, the kind of still that comes before violence or before collapse. He was holding both together through sheer will. Victoria's mask was cracking, the perfect bride composure slipping. Her voice pitched higher, sharper, desperate. "This is insane. I don't even know what room she's talking about. This child is obviously making things up. Someone put her up to this, maybe a competitor trying to sabotage us." But Sophia Chen spoke up from her position near the bridesmaids. Her voice was quiet, but it carried. "Tori, what room were you in at 10 a.m.? Victoria whipped around. "Sophia, are you
This
seriously?"
feels like a dream.
"Just answer the
best dream.
question.
I
What
love
room
you.
were you in?" "The bridal suite, obviously. Getting ready with all of you." Sophia's expression was sad, disappointed. The look of someone watching a friend confirm their worst fears. "You asked us to leave for 30 minutes, remember? You said you needed private time, between 9:45 and 10:15. Victoria's face went white, just for a second, just long enough for everyone to see. Alexander's voice was cold now, controlled, the voice he used in boardrooms when destroying competitors. "Who was with you?" "No one. I was alone. I needed to center myself. This is my wedding day." "Sophia," Alexander said, not taking his eyes off Victoria, "did you hear anything when you came back?" Sophia hesitated, looked at her friend, saw the pleading in Victoria's eyes, then looked at Lily, this small, brave child holding a stuffed rabbit. "There was a man's voice," Sophia said quietly. "Through the door, when I came back early, I heard it. Deep voice, I didn't think anything of it at the time." The crowd erupted. Whispers became conversations. Conversations became excited speculation. Cell phones lifted, recording, broadcasting. This wasn't just a scandal anymore. This was history. Alexander took Victoria's arm. Not gently, not roughly, firm, final. Come with me, now. Alex, everyone's watching. I know. He began walking toward the side chamber, pulling her with him. Daniel, call building security. Get footage from the 12th floor. Bridal suite
This
hallway,
feels like a
9:30
dream.
to
The best
10:30 a.m.
I love you.
Victoria's face drained of remaining color. Her carefully constructed world was collapsing in real time. She tried to pull away, but Alexander's grip was iron. As they disappeared through the side door, Lily stood alone in the center aisle, suddenly with 500 pairs of eyes on her. Her courage wavered. She looked around for her mother. Carmen pushed through the crowd and wrapped her daughter in her arms. Mija, you did good. You did so good. But a man was standing. Row 7, gray hair, expensive suit. The man from the photographs. Marcus Donovan. He was moving toward the exit with the careful speed of someone trying not to draw attention while desperate to leave. Daniel saw him. Hey, sir, please stay seated. But Marcus was already through the doors, already gone. The side chamber was smaller, quieter. A holding room where brides and grooms waited before ceremonies. It had been decorated with the same obsessive attention as the ballroom. White flowers, soft lighting, chairs upholstered in cream silk. None of it mattered now. Victoria paced like something caged. Her words tumbled out in a rapid stream, the carefully modulated voice beginning to crack. Alex, this is insane, a 6-year-old with an overactive imagination. She probably saw me hugging a wedding planner or a relative. Children misunderstand these things. They see something innocent and their minds create stories. Stop. You can't seriously believe I would jeopardize everything we've built together for some random... Stop. Louder now, not quite a shout, but close. Victoria stopped.
This feels
Her
like a
chest
dream.
heaved.
The best
Her
dream.
perfect makeup
I
was
love you.
beginning to show stress cracks around her eyes. Alexander stood absolutely still in the center of the room. His hands were at his sides. His voice when he spoke was quiet, deadly. One question. Truth only, did you kiss someone else this morning? The silence stretched between them. 3 seconds, 5, 10. Victoria's eyes darted, left, right, looking for an exit that didn't exist. Her mind was working frantically behind her face, trying calculations, weighing options, searching for the right lie. Alex, don't let a child ruin what we have. Yes or no. It's not that simple. It's exactly that simple. Yes or no. Another pause, longer this time. Victoria shifted tactics. Her face crumpled. Tears formed in her eyes with practiced ease. Her voice broke in exactly the right places. Okay, yes, I kissed someone, but it meant nothing. It was a mistake. Cold feet. Last moment of doubt before committing to you forever. Haven't you ever had a moment of weakness? Haven't you ever been scared and done something stupid? Alexander's expression didn't change. Who? It doesn't matter. Who? An ex, just an ex, someone from years ago who showed up unexpectedly, and I was overwhelmed, and it was one moment of stupidity that I immediately regretted. A knock cut her off. Daniel entered without waiting for permission. He was holding an iPad. His face was grim. Security footage. You need to see this.
This
He
feels
held
like
out
a
the
dream.
device.
The
Alexander
best
took it.
dream.
The
I love
video
you.
was timestamp marked. 9:53 a.m. that morning. The hallway outside the bridal suite. A man entered the frame. Gray hair, mid-40s, expensive suit. He knocked on the bridal suite door. It opened. Victoria appeared, already in her white lingerie. She pulled him inside. The door closed. Timestamp, 9:53 a.m. The door remained closed. Timestamp, 10:40 a.m., 47 minutes later. The door opened. The same man exited. He was adjusting his tie. His expression was satisfied. Alexander looked up from the screen. His face had gone completely blank. The blankness that comes when emotion is too large to process. Who is that? Daniel was already typing on his phone. Running facial recognition now. A pause. A ping. Got him. Marcus Donovan, corporate raider, specializes in hostile takeovers. Another pause. Longer. Daniel's face darkened further. Alex, his company attempted a takeover of Sterling Capital in 2019. Your father fought him off successfully. Alexander looked at Victoria. She had stopped crying. The mask was slipping further, faster. Real Victoria, or whoever she really was beginning to show through the cracks. Marcus Donovan, Alexander said slowly. Your ex. She didn't answer, couldn't answer. The lies were tangling too quickly to sort out. How long have you known him? Still nothing. How long, Victoria? 2 years, she whispered. Then louder, defensive. I knew him before I knew you. So what?
This feels like a
We've
dream.
been together 18
The
months.
best dream.
The
I
math
love you.
landed between them like a bomb. So you lied, Alexander said. About everything. About your past. About who you know. About... Your father destroyed more than just companies. Victoria's voice rose, cracking completely. The sweet bride vanished. Something harder emerged. He destroyed lives, families, and you built your empire on blood money. Alexander stepped back as if struck. What are you talking about? Daniel's phone buzzed again. He looked at the screen and his face went white. Oh, Jesus Christ. What? Alexander demanded. Victoria Kane. Real Victoria Kane died in 2015. Car accident. This woman? He turned the phone around. Old photo, teenage girl at a funeral. This woman is Isabella Russo, daughter of Antonio Russo. The name hit Alexander like a physical blow. Antonio Russo, the man his father had acquired in 2004. The takeover that had driven the man to bankruptcy, to suicide. The room spun, reformed. Nothing was what he thought it was. Antonio Russo, Alexander said, his voice distant. You're his daughter. Isabella, no longer Victoria, no longer pretending, stood straighter. The tears dried up. Her face hardened into something cold and dangerous and honest for the first time since he'd met her. My father put a gun to his head because of your father. Because Robert Sterling destroyed him, humiliated him, took everything we had. I was 16 years old when I held his body. When I promised him I would make the Sterlings pay. So
This
whole
feels like a
thing,
dream.
Alexander's voice was
The best
hollow.
dream.
I
The
love
relationship, the engagement, the wedding, it was all revenge. Not revenge, Isabella's voice was sharp. Justice, Justice, Alexander's anger flared hot and sudden. You call fraud justice? I call it reclaiming what was stolen from my family. By stealing from me? By taking back what your father took from us. They stood facing each other, the truth between them raw and bleeding. Daniel's phone rang. He answered, listened, his expression growing darker. Alex, he said quietly, we have a bigger problem. Forensic accounting just flagged irregularities in company accounts. Multiple transfers over the last 6 months, all authorized with your digital signature. Shell companies, offshore accounts. That's impossible. I didn't authorize any. Understanding crashed over him. He remembered Victoria asking him to sign documents. Estate planning, she'd said. Wills and trusts. Smart financial preparation. He'd signed them in his office, with the biometric scanner, his fingerprint, his retinal scan. You embedded transfer authorizations in the estate documents, he said, his voice dead. Isabella's smile was cold and triumphant. You signed away everything and never looked closely enough to notice. $340 million. Gone. Transferred to accounts you can't touch. And in 30 minutes, your board will receive evidence of massive fraud under your name. You'll be forced to step down. The company will collapse, just like my father's did. You framed me.
This feels like a
I
dream.
destroyed you. And
The
the
best
best
dream.
part,
I
you
love
let
you.
me. You gave me power of attorney last month. Remember? For estate planning purposes. She laughed, bitter and sharp. You signed your own execution order. Alexander's world was ending. He could feel it crumbling beneath his feet. Everything his father built. Everything he'd worked for. Gone. Stolen by a ghost wearing the face of the woman he'd almost married. Where are you going? He asked as she moved toward the door. Away. To my new life. With Marcus. We're quite fond of the Cayman Islands. You're not going anywhere. He moved to block the door. You going to force me to stay? Assault? In front of 500 witnesses? Smart. Daniel stepped between them. Alex, let her go. We have evidence. We'll call the police. Isabella's laugh was genuine this time. And say what? That I kissed someone? Not illegal. That I tricked you into signing legal documents? You're a Harvard MBA, Sterling. No court will believe you were tricked. You're just a stupid man who thought with his ego instead of his brain. She pushed past Alexander. He let her go. What else could he do? At the door, she turned back. One final strike. That little girl, she saw too much. You might want to protect her. Marcus doesn't like loose ends. Then she was gone, her wedding dress trailing behind her like a white flag of victory. Alexander and Daniel stood in the ruined room. The silence was absolute. Finally, Daniel spoke. What do we do? Alexander's jaw was clenched so tight it ached. Find them, both of them, and we make sure that child stays safe, whatever it costs. The ballroom was chaos, guests demanding answers, media recording everything, security trying to maintain order in a situation that had no order left to maintain. Alexander emerged from the side chamber. His wedding day, his perfect day, destroyed in front of 500 witnesses and streaming live to thousands more. He should have felt humiliated, broken, devastated. Instead, he felt one thing: clarity. He found Carmen and Lily near the entrance. Carmen was trying to make herself invisible, holding Lily close, clearly terrified about what she'd set in motion. Alexander walked straight to them. Carmen flinched, expecting anger, accusations, blame. Mrs. Martinez, Alexander said, his voice gentle despite everything. Can we talk? Privately? Mr. Sterling, I'm so sorry. My daughter didn't mean to ruin your wedding. She didn't ruin anything. He knelt down to Lily's level. The second time that day. His knees were going to ache later, but it didn't matter. She saved me from making the biggest mistake of my life. Lily looked at him with those two observant eyes. Are you mad at me? No. His voice was absolutely certain. I'm grateful. What you did was incredibly brave. You told the truth even though you were scared. That's what heroes do. Lily's lower lip trembled. I'm not a hero, I'm just a kid. Alexander smiled, the first genuine smile he'd managed in hours. You're a kid who's braver than most adults I know. Thank you, Lily. Daniel appeared at Alexander's shoulder, phone pressed to his ear, his expression urgent. Alex, we have a problem. Victoria, Isabella, whatever her name is, she and Marcus just left in a private car and… He hesitated, looked at Lily, then continued quietly. There's been a credible threat against Lily. Marcus called someone. We intercepted part of the conversation. He's eliminating loose ends. Carmen's arms tightened around her daughter. What does that mean? Alexander stood. His face had gone hard. It means my problems just became your problems, and I'm going to fix that. He pulled out his phone. Daniel, get the best security firm in Chicago. 24/7 protection. Armed. Alex, that's incredibly expensive. I don't care. Do it. Carmen shook her head rapidly. Mr. Sterling, we can't afford private security. We can barely afford our rent. You're not paying, I am. Your daughter saved me. The least I can do is keep her safe. We can't accept charity. Alexander looked at her directly. His blue eyes were intense but honest. This isn't charity, Mrs. Martinez. Your daughter is in danger because she told the truth about my life. That makes it my responsibility. Please, let me help. Carmen wanted to argue. Pride warred with fear. But when she looked down at Lily, at her 6-year-old daughter who had somehow gotten tangled up in billionaire drama, pride lost. Okay, she whispered. Okay, but just until it's safe. Alexander's phone was already ringing, his lawyer, Richard Hayes. The conversation was brief and intense. FBI is opening an investigation based on the financial irregularities, Richard said. They want to talk to you immediately. And Alex, there's more. Isabella's lawyers just filed documents. The prenup you signed, it had clauses that essentially gave her control of significant assets if you failed to complete the marriage. Failed to complete? I didn't fail. She committed fraud. Doesn't matter. Legally, you backed out. She's claiming she was investigating your crimes, that the wedding was her trying to protect herself. It's insane, but her lawyers are good. Alexander closed his eyes. The hits kept coming. How bad is it? Bad. Without that little girl's testimony, you look guilty. With it, we have a chance. Alexander looked at Lily, 6 years old, clutching a stuffed rabbit, already traumatized by what she'd seen. And now she was the key witness in a federal fraud case. I'll talk to the FBI, Alexander said, but Lily and her mother get protection first. Non-negotiable. Already arranging it. The security firm arrived within 30 minutes. 3 professionals in dark suits with the particular awareness that comes from military training. They assessed the situation quickly, efficiently. We're moving you to a secure location, the team leader told Carmen. Pack what you need, quickly. Where are we going? Carmen asked. Alexander answered. My penthouse. It's the most secure building in Chicago, 48 floors up. Private elevator, security system that costs more than most people's houses. You'll stay there until this is resolved. Mr. Sterling, we can't. You can. You will. His tone left no room for argument. Then softer, please. I need to know you're safe. Sunday morning arrived cold and gray. Alexander hadn't slept. He stood in his office, the same office where he'd worked on his wedding day morning, and watched the sun struggle to break through Chicago's clouds. Daniel arrived at 7 with 3 boxes of documents and a forensic accountant named Michelle Park. Michelle was 40, sharp, spoke in precise numbers and cold facts. She spread the evidence across Alexander's conference table like a coroner laying out organs. $340 million, she said without preamble. Transferred over 6 months through 12 different shell companies. Each transaction was below the threshold that would trigger automatic alerts. Whoever planned this knew your systems intimately. Isabella, Alexander said. She had access to everything. More than access. She had authorization codes, biometric clearance, knowledge of your security protocols. This wasn't an outside hack. This was systematic internal theft. Daniel pulled up documents on his laptop. Every transfer traces back to your digital signature, your fingerprint, your retinal scan, all recorded on documents you physically signed. The estate planning documents, Alexander said, remembering. She brought them to me at different times over 6 months, always with some plausible reason. Updating wills, trust modifications, tax optimization. I signed them without reading every page. I trusted her. Trusting cost you $340 million, Michelle said bluntly. Alexander looked at the numbers. The evidence of his own stupidity laid out in neat spreadsheets. His father would have been ashamed. His father who had always said trust was weakness in business. Except his father had been guilty of worse things. The Antonio Russo acquisition. The insider information. The shortcuts and aggressive tactics that pushed men to desperation. Maybe this was karma. Maybe the Sterlings deserved this. No, Alexander stopped that thought. He didn't deserve this. And Lily certainly didn't deserve to be threatened because she told the truth. Can we recover any of it? He asked. Michelle nodded slowly. Maybe. If we can prove fraud before the money moves beyond reach. But we need evidence that links Isabella directly to the theft with criminal intent. Right now, you signed the documents. Legally, you authorized the transfers. Her defense will be that these were legitimate business transactions you approved. Lily's testimony, Daniel said, her photos, the audio recording. What audio recording? Alexander's head snapped up. Daniel pulled out a small tablet, Lily's tablet. She had this in her pocket when she witnessed the kiss. It was recording. We have 47 seconds of Isabella and Marcus discussing the plan. He played it. The voices were clear. Marcus, after today, half the company is ours. Isabella, and Sterling will be ruined, just like my father was. Marcus, your father would be proud, Isabella. Isabella, this is for Papa and for everyone the Sterlings destroyed. Silence in the office as the recording ended. That's conspiracy, Michelle said. Clear criminal intent. With this, we can freeze the accounts, start seizure proceedings. FBI needs to hear this immediately, Daniel added. Alexander was already pulling out his phone. But before he could dial, his office door burst open. A man in a dark suit with an FBI badge. Agent Patricia Morgan, 42, no-nonsense expression. Mr. Sterling, we have a warrant to search your premises and seize your financial records. You're under investigation for wire fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy. Alexander stared. I'm the victim here. That's not what the evidence suggests. You're going to need to come with us. The FBI field office was exactly what Alexander expected. Harsh fluorescent lights, cheap furniture, the institutional smell of government buildings everywhere. He sat in an interview room with Richard Hayes beside him and Agent Morgan across the table. Mr. Sterling, we have substantial evidence of financial crimes committed using your authorization codes, Morgan began. $340 million transferred illegally over 6 months. Your digital signature on every document. Your biometric authentication on every transaction. I was tricked, Alexander said. The woman I was about to marry, her real name is Isabella Russo. She embedded transfer authorizations in documents I thought were estate planning materials. Morgan's expression didn't change. You're a Harvard MBA, you run a multi-billion-dollar company, and you expect me to believe you were tricked by forged paperwork? I expect you to believe the truth. The truth is that we have your signatures, your biometric data, and $340 million missing. That's what I believe. Richard leaned forward. Agent Morgan, my client is the victim of a sophisticated long-term fraud. We have evidence. What evidence? Testimony from an eyewitness, video recordings, audio of the perpetrators discussing their plan. Morgan's interest sharpened. Show me. Daniel, who had been waiting outside, was brought in. He placed Lily's tablet on the table and pulled up the photos. Clear images of Isabella and Marcus kissing, timestamp, location data, then the audio recording. Morgan listened without expression. When it ended, she sat back. Who's your witness? A 6-year-old girl named Lily Martinez. She saw Isabella with Marcus Donovan on the morning of my wedding. She recorded this without knowing what she was recording. She just knew something was wrong. A 6-year-old? Morgan's tone was skeptical. Defense attorneys will tear that apart. Children are unreliable witnesses, easily influenced, prone to imagination. This child has selective mutism, Richard said. She doesn't speak to most people. When she does speak, she's hyper-honest, and she has physical evidence, photos, audio, metadata that proves when and where it was recorded. Morgan studied the tablet, studied the evidence. Her expression was unreadable. Where is Isabella Russo now? Unknown. She and Marcus Donovan fled after the wedding. We believe they're trying to leave the country. Morgan stood abruptly. I need to make some calls. She left the room. Alexander and Richard sat in silence, waiting. The minutes stretched. 15, 20, 30. Finally, Morgan returned. Her expression had shifted slightly, less hostile, more interested. We're issuing warrants for Isabella Russo and Marcus Donovan. Conspiracy, fraud, identity theft. We're also freezing all accounts connected to the shell companies. She looked at Alexander. You're not completely clear yet, Mr. Sterling, but you're no longer our primary suspect. Don't leave Chicago. I'm not going anywhere, Alexander said. Not until Lily is safe. Morgan paused at the door. The girl, Martinez, where is she now? Protected, private security. We'll want to interview her, gently, with child psychologists present. Can you arrange that? Anything that helps. After Morgan left, Alexander slumped in his chair. The adrenaline was wearing off. Exhaustion crashed over him in waves. What now? He asked Richard. Now we wait. The FBI does their job. We protect your assets. We prepare for the legal battles ahead. Richard packed his briefcase. And you figure out what kind of man you want to be on the other side of this. What does that mean? It means Isabella was right about one thing. Your father did destroy her family. Maybe not illegally, maybe not prosecutably, but ethically? Richard shrugged. That's a different question. Alexander thought about his father, about the aggressive tactics and ruthless acquisitions, about men like Antonio Russo, who lost everything while Robert Sterling built his empire. I'm not my father, Alexander said quietly. No, you're not, so prove it. Back in his penthouse, Carmen and Lily were settling into the guest rooms. Alexander found them in the kitchen. Lily was drawing on her tablet. Carmen was making tea with shaking hands. Is it over? Carmen asked. Not yet, but we're making progress. The FBI is looking for Isabella and Marcus. They're freezing the stolen money. Lily looked up from her drawing. She had been quiet since the wedding. Too quiet. Mr. Alex? Her voice was small. Yes, Lily? Did I do the right thing? Alexander crossed the room and knelt beside her chair. You did the exact right thing, the brave thing, the honest thing, and because of you, bad people are going to face justice. But you're sad. He was sad. Of course he was sad. His wedding destroyed, his company under investigation, his trust shattered, $340 million stolen, his father's sins exposed. But when he looked at this small girl who had risked everything to tell him the truth, he realized something. He wasn't just sad, he was also grateful. Grateful that someone had cared enough to be honest. Grateful that the wedding had stopped and before he'd legally bound himself to a lie. Grateful that he'd been given a chance to be better than his father. I am sad, he told Lily honestly, but I'm also glad because you saved me from something much worse. Lily considered this. Then she reached out and patted his hand with her small one. The gesture was so purely kind, so innocent, that Alexander felt something crack in his chest. It's going to be okay, Mr. Alex, Lily said with the absolute certainty of a child who still believed in happy endings. Good people win. That's what Mommy says. Alexander hoped she was right. He hoped that good people did win. He hoped that truth mattered and justice existed and that the world made sense. But even if it didn't, even if Isabella and Marcus escaped, even if he lost everything, he would make sure this child stayed safe. That was one promise he could keep. One truth in a world full of lies. Monday morning, 48 hours after the wedding that never was. Agent Morgan stood in the FBI Operations Center, surrounded by screens showing real-time data feeds, financial transactions, airport security footage, license plate readers, the digital web that made it nearly impossible for people to truly disappear in the modern age. Nearly impossible, but not completely. Isabella Russo and Marcus Donovan had vanished. Alexander stood beside her, exhausted but wired on coffee and adrenaline. Daniel was on his other side. They had been here since midnight, watching the agents work, waiting for the breakthrough that had to come. Private jet filed a flight plan to Grand Cayman Saturday night, one analyst reported. Passengers listed as Victor and Michelle Blackwood. Fake IDs, but facial recognition confirms Isabella Russo and Marcus Donovan. Did they land? Morgan asked. Never took off. Flight was canceled last minute. We think they realized we were watching the airports. Another analyst spoke up from across the room. Got a hit on a credit card, hotel in Evanston, checked in Sunday morning under different names, but the card traces back to one of the shell companies we flagged. Morgan moved fast. How current is this? 20 minutes ago, room service charge. Send a team, now, full tactical. These two are desperate, and desperate people are dangerous. Alexander watched the screens as FBI agents mobilized. Black SUVs pulling out of the garage. Communication channels lighting up with coordinated chatter. The machinery of law enforcement moving with precision toward a hotel 15 miles north. You should wait here, Morgan told him. That woman tried to destroy my life. I want to see her face when you arrest her. Mr. Sterling, this is an active operation. I'll stay in the vehicle. I won't interfere, but I need to be there. Morgan studied him, saw something in his expression that she recognized. Not revenge exactly, something more complicated. The need to witness the end of something so that the beginning of something else could start. Fine, but you stay in the car. Any deviation and I'll have you arrested for obstruction. The drive to Evanston took 23 minutes. Alexander sat in the back of an FBI vehicle, watching Chicago slide past the tinted windows. The city where he'd been born, where his father had built an empire, where he'd almost married a ghost. The hotel was modest, 3 stars, the kind of place where people stayed when they were trying not to be noticed. FBI vehicles surrounded the building with practiced efficiency. Agents in tactical gear moved into position. Morgan's voice crackled over the radio. All units in position. On my mark. 3, 2, 1, go. They breached the room on the 4th floor. The sound echoed down the stairwell. Shouts of FBI, hands up, get down. The language of arrest that Alexander had only ever heard on television. It was over in 90 seconds. Isabella Russo was brought out in handcuffs. Her blonde hair was darker now, dyed brown in a cheap hotel bathroom. She wore jeans and a sweatshirt instead of designer clothes. No makeup, no mask. Just the raw truth of who she really was. A woman destroyed by grief 20 years ago, who had let that grief calcify into hate. Her eyes found Alexander through the tinted window of the SUV. Even from this distance, he could see the venom in her gaze, the unfinished fury, the absolute conviction that she was right and he was wrong, and nothing would ever change that. Marcus Donovan came next. He looked older, tired, less like a corporate raider, and more like a man who had played a game and lost everything on a bad bet. They were loaded into separate vehicles. Doors slammed, engines started. "We got them," Morgan said, approaching Alexander's window. "They're going to federal holding. Arraignment is tomorrow." What happens now? Now we build the case. Financial forensics, witness testimony, evidence chain. We make sure they never see the outside of a prison for a very long time. Alexander nodded. He should have felt triumph, victory, the satisfaction of justice served. Instead, he just felt tired. 2 weeks passed in a blur of lawyers and depositions and evidence review. The financial forensics came back clear. $340 million traced through shell companies back to accounts controlled by Isabella and Marcus. Email records recovered from seized devices showed months of planning. The plot laid out in digital ink. Conspiracy, fraud, identity theft. The charges piled up like snow in a Chicago winter. But the prosecution had a problem. Without clear proof of criminal intent to defraud specifically Alexander Sterling, Isabella's lawyers were arguing this was a civil matter, a business dispute, aggressive tactics perhaps, but not criminal. The audio recording Lily had accidentally captured was crucial, but defense attorneys were already preparing to challenge its admissibility. The recording was made by a minor without consent. The chain of custody was questionable. A child's testimony was unreliable. "We need Lily to testify," the prosecutor told Alexander in a conference room on the 14th floor of the federal building. Her name was Catherine Ross, 45. Sharp, 300 wins and 7 losses over her career. "She's 6 years old," Carmen said. She sat beside Alexander, her hands folded tightly in her lap. 2 weeks in the penthouse had not made her comfortable with this world of power and money and legal maneuvering. "You want to put my daughter on a witness stand?" "I want to make sure the people who threatened her go to prison," Catherine said, not unkindly. "And Lily is our strongest witness. She saw them together. She heard their conversation. She has physical evidence, but most importantly, she has credibility. Juries trust children, especially children who have nothing to gain from lying. She has trauma to gain from testifying," Carmen said. "Nightmares, fear, the memory of being questioned by defense attorneys who will try to make her doubt what she saw." Alexander spoke quietly. "I won't ask this of her. Find another way." Catherine's expression was sympathetic but firm. "There is no other way. Without Lily's testimony, Isabella walks. Maybe not completely free, but with reduced charges. She could be out in 3 years, and Marcus even sooner." The room fell silent. Finally, a small voice from the doorway. "I'll do it." Everyone turned. Lily stood in the threshold holding Mr. Hops. She had been waiting in the outer office with a child advocate. Apparently, she had heard everything. "Lily, mija, you don't have to," Carmen started. "But I do." Lily walked into the room with the careful dignity that children sometimes possess when they understand something important is happening. "The bad lady tried to hurt Mr. Alex, and she said mean things. If I don't tell the truth, she wins. That's not fair." Alexander knelt down to her level. "A habit now. Lily, this will be hard, scary. The lawyers on the other side will ask you lots of questions. They'll try to confuse you." "I'm not confused. I know what I saw." "You're very brave, but you don't have to be brave about this." Lily looked at him with those 2 old eyes. "You were nice to me. You picked up Mr. Hops when I dropped him. You asked my name. Nobody important ever asked my name." She paused. "I want to help you." Carmen was crying now, quiet tears that she wiped away quickly. Okay, but I'm with her every second, and if it's too much, we stop." Catherine nodded. "We'll have a child psychologist present. The judge will allow breaks. We'll do everything we can to make this as gentle as possible." Over the next week, they prepared Lily. gently, carefully. A child psychologist named Dr. Sarah Chen worked with her, teaching her what to expect in a courtroom, how to answer questions, how to say I don't know or I don't understand if she needed to. Alexander watched these sessions from behind one-way glass. Watch this small girl practice being brave. Practice telling the truth over and over until it became something she could manage without falling apart. And he felt a rage deeper than anything he had experienced at the wedding. Not at Isabella, not at Marcus, at the universe that put children in positions where they had to be braver than adults, where they had to sacrifice their innocence to fix things that grown people had broken. One evening after a particularly long preparation session, Lily found Alexander on the penthouse balcony. 48 floors up, Chicago spread out below like a circuit board of lights. She didn't say anything, just stood beside him, holding Mr. Hops, looking at the city. "You okay?" Alexander asked. "Tired. Me too." They stood in comfortable silence. Then Lily spoke again. "Mr. Alex, after the bad lady goes to jail, will Mommy and me have to leave?" "Leave? Your house. We don't have money for a house this nice. We'll have to go back to our old place. It's small and the heat doesn't work good." Alexander's chest tightened. He had been so focused on the legal battle that he hadn't thought about what came after. When this was over and Carmen and Lily went back to their lives, when the security detail was pulled, when they returned to a modest apartment and he returned to his empty penthouse, the thought of this building being empty again was suddenly unbearable. "What if you didn't have to leave?" he said carefully. Lily looked up at him. "What do you mean?" "I mean, this place is too big for one person, and it's been nice having you here. You and your mom. It feels less empty." "You mean we could stay, like forever?" "If you wanted to, if your mom wanted to. I'm not trying to buy your testimony or anything like that. I just think maybe we could help each other. I could help with rent and school and things you need. And you could help me remember what matters." Lily considered this with the seriousness that children bring to important decisions. "I would like that," she said finally. "But you have to ask Mommy. She gets to decide." "I will, I promise." The federal courthouse was built in the 1930s, all marble and columns and the particular gravitas that architecture used to carry. Journalists lined the steps. Cameras tracked every arrival. This was the trial of the year. Billionaire betrayed by con artist bride. The story had everything. Money, romance, revenge. A 6-year-old hero. Inside courtroom 6, Judge Sarah Morrison presided. 55 years old. 20 years on the bench. No patience for theatrics. Isabella sat at the defense table wearing an orange jumpsuit. Prison had stripped away the last of her polish. She looked thin, hard, unrepentant. Marcus sat beside her, his expensive lawyer whispering in his ear. The prosecution table held Catherine Ross and her team. Behind them, Alexander sat in the gallery. Carmen beside him, Daniel on his other side. Sophia Chen had come too, looking guilty and sad. And in a private room off the courtroom, Lily waited with Dr. Chen and her stuffed rabbit. The trial moved through its phases: opening statements, expert witnesses, financial forensics presented in excruciating detail. The documentary evidence of conspiracy and fraud laid out piece by piece. Isabella's lawyer, Douglas Winters, was good, expensive and good. He attacked every piece of evidence, questioned every witness, created doubt where there should have been certainty. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said in his closing argument before Lily testified, "this is not a criminal conspiracy. This is a business dispute between sophisticated parties. My client and Mr. Sterling entered into agreements that he now regrets. That doesn't make them criminal. It makes them complicated." But then it was time for Lily. The bailiff called her name. The door opened. Dr. Chen walked beside her. Carmen was allowed to sit in the front row where Lily could see her. Lily climbed into the witness box. She looked impossibly small. The chair was too big. Her feet dangled above the floor. She clutched Mr. Hops in her lap. Judge Morrison smiled at her. "Hi, Lily. Do you know why you're here?" Lily's voice was quiet but clear. "To tell the truth." "That's right. And you promise to tell the truth?" "Yes, lying is bad." A ripple of something, sympathy maybe, moved through the courtroom. Catherine Ross approached gently. "Lily, do you remember the morning of Mr. Sterling's wedding?" "Yes." Tell us what you saw. And Lily did, in simple language, without embellishment. She described being in the hotel, seeing the door open, looking inside, the pretty lady in white underwear kissing the gray hair man. What did you hear them say? They said they were going to take everything from Mr. Alex after today. They said his daddy was bad and they were going to make him lose everything. Did this scare you? Yes. But you told anyway. Why? Lily looked at Alexander in the gallery. Because Mr. Alex was nice to me, and it's wrong to trick nice people. The simplicity of it, the pure moral clarity, it cut through all the legal complexity like light through fog. Douglas Winters stood for cross-examination. He was gentler than he would have been with an adult witness. He had to be, but he still tried. Lily, you're very young. Sometimes young people see things and get confused. Is it possible you saw Mr. Sterling's fiancée hugging a wedding planner and thought it was something else? No, they were kissing like on TV. But you watch TV, right? You see people kissing on TV. Could you have gotten confused about what's real and what's TV? No, I know real from TV. This was real and I have pictures. The tablets and photos were already in evidence. But Lily's certainty was unshakable. Douglas tried another angle. Did anyone tell you what to say today? Dr. Chen said to tell the truth. Did Mr. Sterling tell you what to say? Mr. Alex said, tell what happened. So I'm telling what happened. Mr. Sterling gave your mother a place to live. He bought you things, nice things. Do you want to make him happy? Lily thought about this. Yes, but I would tell the truth even if I was sad, because lying is worse than sad. Douglas had nothing left. He sat down. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. When they returned, the foreperson stood. In the case of United States versus Isabella Russo and Marcus Donovan, on the charge of conspiracy to commit wire fraud, how do you find? Guilty. On the charge of identity theft? Guilty. On the charge of fraud? Guilty. Isabella's face remained stone, but something behind her eyes cracked. The certainty that she was right, that her cause was just, that revenge was the same as justice. All of it shattering under the weight of 12 ordinary people saying, no, you're wrong, this is not okay. Marcus put his head in his hands. The sentencing came 2 weeks later. Judge Morrison looked at both defendants. Ms. Russo, Mr. Donovan, you both engaged in a calculated, long-term conspiracy to defraud Mr. Sterling of hundreds of millions of dollars. You weaponized intimacy and trust. You exploited personal tragedy for financial gain. And when a 6-year-old child stood in your way, you threatened her. She paused. The courtroom was silent. Ms. Russo, I sentence you to 12 years in federal prison. Mr. Donovan, I sentence you to 8 years. You will also pay full restitution of $340 million plus penalties and interest. Isabella stood. Your Honor, may I speak? You may. I want to apologize. Her voice was different now, smaller. To Mr. Sterling, to Lily, to everyone I hurt. My father's death broke something in me. I let that brokenness become hate, and hate made me cruel. I'm sorry, it won't undo what I did, but I am sorry. It was the first honest thing Alexander had heard her say since the wedding. 1 year later. The kindergarten gymnasium was decorated with construction paper flowers and hand-drawn posters. Parents filled the folding chairs, cameras ready. The spring concert was about to begin. Alexander sat in the third row beside Carmen. Daniel and Sophia were on his other side. They were engaged now. The wedding disaster had somehow brought them together. On stage, 26-year-olds stood in neat rows, wearing their best clothes, nervous and excited. Lily stood in the center of the front row. Her hair was in 2 braids. She wore a blue dress that Carmen had made. Mr. Hops was probably backstage in her backpack. She wouldn't perform without him nearby. The music teacher played the opening notes. The children began to sing. Off-key, too loud in some places, too quiet in others. Perfect. Lily's voice was one of many. She was learning to speak more, to trust more. The selective mutism was easing slowly with therapy and safety and time. Alexander watched her and felt something he had no name for. Pride, yes, affection, certainly, but something deeper, the feeling of being connected to another person's happiness in a way that made his own happiness possible. After the concert, they went for ice cream. A tradition now. Every Friday evening, ice cream and conversation and the ordinary miracle of family. Mr. Alex? Lily asked, chocolate ice cream on her chin. Yes? My teacher said we have to write about our families for homework. Who should I say you are? Alexander looked at Carmen. They had been having versions of this conversation for months. What were they to each other? What were they building? What do you want to say I am? He asked. Lily considered. I think you're my family. Not like a daddy. I had a daddy and he left. But like a Mr. Alex who's mine. Is that okay? That's more than okay. What about Mommy? What is she to you? Carmen blushed. Alexander smiled. They hadn't told Lily yet. Hadn't told anyone yet. Your mommy is also my family, Alexander said carefully. We're all family to each other. Different kinds of family. But family. Like when you picked us, Lily said, and we picked you back. Exactly like that. Later that evening, after Lily was asleep, Alexander and Carmen sat on the penthouse balcony. The city glowed below. Lake Michigan stretched dark to the east. She asked me to marry her today, Carmen said quietly. Alexander laughed. Lily asked you to marry me? At bedtime. She said if we got married, we would be a real family. She's very concerned with making things official. What did you tell her? I told her that families come in all shapes, that love doesn't need a wedding to be real. Carmen paused. But I wouldn't say no if you asked, someday, when enough time has passed that people don't think it's weird. Alexander took her hand. I spent 20 years building an empire, working 80-hour weeks, chasing success, and I was completely empty. Then a 6-year-old girl ran down an aisle and saved my life. And now I have this. He gestured at the penthouse, at the city, at her. And this is worth more than all of it. You're going soft in your old age, Carmen teased. I'm 34. That's not old. Lily thinks anyone over 30 is ancient. They sat in comfortable silence. A year ago, Alexander had been preparing for a wedding to a woman who wanted to destroy him. Now he was sitting with a housekeeper and her daughter, and feeling more at peace than he had ever felt in his designer office or his empty penthouse or his perfectly controlled life. The Sterling Capital annual report had been released last week. Revenue was up. The company was stronger than ever. Alexander had implemented new oversight procedures, ethics reviews, transparency measures, trying to build something better than what his father had left behind. He had also established the Russo Family Foundation, $20 million in endowment, scholarships for children of bankruptcies and business failures, a small attempt to acknowledge the pain his father's success had caused. Isabella had written him from prison, a letter that arrived 3 months into her sentence. Mr. Sterling, it began, I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know that I've been thinking about the little girl who stopped your wedding, about her courage, about what it means to tell the truth even when the truth is hard. I spent 20 years planning revenge. I thought it would make me feel better. It didn't. It just made me cruel. My father wouldn't have wanted this. He was a good man who made bad business decisions. He would have wanted me to build something new, not destroy something old. I have 12 years to think about that, to figure out who I want to be when I get out. Thank you for not hating me, or thank you for hating me less than I deserve. Isabella Alexander had read the letter 3 times. Then he filed it away. He didn't hate her, he pitied her, and he hoped that 12 years would be enough time for her to find whatever she was looking for. What are you thinking about? Carmen asked. Everything. Nothing. How strange life is. Strange good or strange bad? Strange perfect. The door to the balcony opened. Lily appeared in her pajamas, rubbing her eyes, dragging Mr. Hops. Can't sleep? Carmen asked. Bad dream. Alexander stood and scooped her up. She was getting bigger. Soon she would be too big to carry, but not yet. Want to tell us about it? The pretty lady was back, being mean. But she's not back. She's in prison. You're safe. I know. But my brain forgot. Carmen stood and wrapped her arms around both of them. The 3 of them standing on a balcony 48 floors above Chicago. An unlikely family. A chosen family. A family that existed because a 6-year-old girl had been brave enough to tell the truth. I love you, Lily said sleepily. Not clear who she was talking to. Maybe both of them. Maybe the moment itself. We love you too, Alexander said. And he meant it, not the way he had meant anything before, not the calculated love of business relationships or the performed love of his almost marriage, but real love, complicated and imperfect and absolutely certain. Down in the city, people were living their lives, going to work, coming home, fighting and loving and trying to make sense of the chaos. Most of them would never know about the wedding that didn't happen, about the fraud and the investigation and the trial, about the small girl who changed everything. But Alexander knew, and Carmen knew, and Lily knew, and that was enough. The city lights blinked below them like stars. The lake stretched into darkness. The night held them gently, and Alexander Sterling, who had spent his whole life building empires and chasing success and running from anything that looked like vulnerability, finally stopped running. He was home, the courthouse steps on a Saturday morning. No journalists this time, no cameras, just three people and a judge doing them a favor. Judge Morrison smiled at them from behind her desk in her chambers. She had agreed to do this ceremony as a personal gesture. She had watched Lily testify. She had seen what this family had survived. Lily Martinez, she said formally, do you understand what it means to be adopted? Lily nodded. She was 7 now, taller, more confident. Her voice worked most of the time now. It means Mr. Alex becomes my legal daddy, and I become his legal daughter, even though we both know I'm already his daughter. This just makes it official. Judge Morrison laughed. That's exactly right, Alexander Sterling. Do you promise to love, protect, and care for Lily as your daughter? I do. His voice was steady, certain. Carmen Martinez, do you consent to this adoption? I do. Carmen was crying, happy tears. Then by the power vested in me by the state of Illinois, I declare that Lily Martinez is now legally Lily Martinez Sterling. Congratulations. Lily hugged Alexander. He lifted her up. Carmen joined them, the three of them holding each other in a judge's chambers on a Saturday morning. Outside, Daniel and Sophia waited with balloons and cake. A small celebration, nothing elaborate, nothing that needed cameras or audiences, just family. As they walked down the courthouse steps, Lily asked one more question. Mr. Alex? Can I still call you Mr. Alex sometimes? I like how it sounds. Alexander laughed. You can call me whatever you want. Mr. Alex, Dad, Alexander, anything. What about Papa? Like in Spanish. Carmen made a soft sound. Her father had been called Papa before he died. Papa works, Alexander said, his voice thick. Papa works perfectly. And so they went home, to the penthouse that was no longer empty, to the life they had built from the wreckage of a wedding that never happened, to the truth that had saved them all. Years later, people would still talk about the Sterling wedding scandal, about the billionaire betrayed and the con artist bride. They would make documentaries and write articles and use it as a cautionary tale about trust and deception. But they would miss the real story. The real story was about a little girl who ran down an aisle because kindness mattered more than fear. About a man who learned that empire without love is just emptiness with expensive furniture. About a woman who worked 3 jobs to give her daughter a better life and ended up changing 3 lives instead. The real story was about family. Not the family you're born into, not the family you marry into, but the family you choose. The family that chooses you back. The family that exists because people decided that truth and love and showing up were more important than anything else. That was the story, and it had a happy ending after all. The end.